Gary, I know, has a lot to offer as well. For those departing early, please drive safely. I know that, by nature, we tend to not trust the weatherman, but it is supposed to be 50 degrees today. So that'll be a good thing when you walk outside, because I'm sure those of you who drove in this morning had some icy roads and a little slick travel. So we're excited. We're almost ready for Gary, but I'm going to call him up. He is aware that you heard all good things about him before he came in. So Gary, thank you.
Well, no, it's the only one on there. Just close all that. It's just right there. Just load that on there. It is 50 degrees in Charlotte. Yeah, I had a real good experience yesterday. I was over in Indiana doing a workshop for John's counterpart over there, and they canceled my flight from Indianapolis because I was going to get here and drink some of John's liquor last night, but that didn't happen. I got canceled at 10:30 in the morning. You still looking for it, Rich? Okay. He's trying to see what else I get. It's nothing top secret on there, Rich. Hell, I don't keep secret. Anyway, they canceled my flight at 10:30 in the morning, and I was in the airport until 7:30, and it finally dawned on me, Charlotte is a major American Airlines hub. So I rescheduled, rebooked, because there was a 10:30 out of Charlotte last night. So I was able to get back to Charlotte late yesterday afternoon. And if they canceled that flight, I was not going to be here today. So I sent all this stuff to John and Rich last night. I want you to know that. And John texted me about a minute before I'm supposed to get on here. He says, by the way, do you have a flash drive? I'm like, dude, you had this stuff yesterday. I worked my butt off in the airport to get this stuff together for you. Now, I realize, how many contractors are in the room? Okay, how many of you do airports? Okay, so you're probably the only one that's going to give a rat's rear end about what I have to say this morning. The rest of you can get your nap. I'm already 15 minutes behind, so I'm going to try to get through this. I've got 27 slides. John told me 30 minutes. I said, well, I can probably get a minute a slide, but then I use the first 15 minutes saying nothing. So I'm going to try to get through this. Does this thing work, Rich? Wow, that's amazing. I'm going to try to get through this in 20 minutes, so I'm going to skip some slides because most of you ain't caring anyway. But I was able to correct a few errors this morning. I do this the last minute every time. There was an error on this slide, and then I fixed it, so I don't get to talk about it this morning. I do want to acknowledge two people that was involved in this endeavor, Doug Johnson and Greg Klein. Those are the two paving engineers at the FAA. They have worked with us phenomenally and allowed our input as the association into the rewrite of the FAA construction guide specifications. It's a monstrous document, about 700 some odd pages. I'm not going to go through it all. I thought, well, I'll go through every page and tell you what changed on it. But we had a lot of influence in what got changed. These two guys worked with us. It is theirs. They did the right, but we did have a lot of input into it. Now, we'll get into that in just a minute. Why do we update? Well, things change, as you know. They try to do it every 3 to 5 years, usually for the construction specification and the design guide. But some of the others don't get done in the 3 to 5 year time frame. But the state of the practice changes, and everybody knows that. So we try to do updates to reference those changes to address some of the issues and concerns that we might have. Now, how do we know what to update? Well, a lot of that is based on comments and discussions and feedback that the FAA gets back from the industry, and they collaborate quite well with the industry. I've got a list of them here, and you'll notice we're on that list. Now, I like to think, and the fact is I know because these guys were good friends of mine before they became the paving engineers at the FAA, and so we collaborate. Doug and I talk usually, a lot of time by text message on a daily basis because we have problems, they have problems, and we're back and forth on, okay, how do we solve this, what's doable, what's not doable. So they listen to us and all the other industries as well when they made this update. Some of it came from what was the most modification to their standards. So here's a quick overview, and I'm not going to go through each of these one at a time, but there was a lot of items that we worked on in the in the update on a number of the different P items. Our role mainly is collaboration. We are involved in working with the FAA in resolving a number of problems. A lot of them center around construction in the field, and we help members comply with the spec and get things done because it is a national specification and things are different locally, and sometimes we make adjustments on the local scene to try to get some materials used. We do work with the FAA. As a matter of fact, they've actually asked us before in places where we have no interest in, no members, and no dog in the hunt to go and resolve issues for them. And we've done that. We spent our own money to work with the FAA. That builds a relationship where when they understand that we're here to try to help quality control for them. So our group, we have an airport task force, and that task force worked. Martin Holt is the chairman, and I've acknowledged a couple of guys there. Harold Honey with Michael Baker International was a former Air Force. He's a consultant now. So we had contractors, consultant. We had a chapter, Angela Folkstead from Colorado, Wyoming, who had airport experience. She helped us go through this. Golden Triangle, we met up here over in Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. Y'all know Pittsburgh's in Pennsylvania. That's over on the far end of the state. We met over there on a cold day. It's about as cold as it is here. Maybe colder, Chuck. It's so damn cold over there, it wouldn't snow. Anyway, we met over there with their folks in Michael Baker's office, and we literally redlined the specification, the concrete specification, the P501, from front to back, every item. We went through it, marked it up, redlined it, and it's hard to tell exactly because some of the wording and the way we move things around, but we got about 80% of what we felt needed to be changed in the P501. So we'll move on real quickly. These are the provisions that's important to us. C100 is brand new. It's a construction quality control or contractor quality control specification. It's always been in there, but we pulled it out and made it its own animal. And it's got a pay item associated with it, contractors. So you're required to do certain things, but you will get paid for it. And that should level the playing field where everybody's doing the same quality control and having to, because this whole thing is centered around quality control. These other items, and we'll touch on them real briefly as we go through here, because I'm already running out. I forgot to start my stopwatch, so right now I'm on 0. So I still have 30 minutes. P209 is probably one of the toughest specs to meet in the FAA specification. We've had some problems getting aggregates to meet the dust ratio. That's the number 200 to the number 40 sieve. That's been changed. It was at 50%. We had a lot of good aggregates that were being turned down. That was at 51, 52, 53%. It's been changed to 66 or 2/3 now, actually. And it's a stability issue with the aggregate. And some aggregates perform better at 2/3 dust ratio than they would at 50% anyway. So we don't know where the number came from. 219 is a new recycled aggregate. You don't have to have a mod standard anymore to use recycled concrete for an aggregate base course. The cement treated base was changed on acceptance from you don't have to lot any more contractors with this because that's not a PWL item. It's not a percent within limits, so it doesn't matter. It's based off of the area. The density testing has been changed. Some engineers interpreted that we had to do a 3-point curve for every lot. That material that's coming out of a plant being produced, it's very consistent, so we got that changed to where it's only on an as-needed basis. The thickness is being accepted now on survey. If the engineer so chooses, he has the option to do it on survey, or you can do a 3-inch diameter hole. That material doesn't stay together every time when you pull that 3-inch core out. So we decided to measure the depth of the hole because we were getting a lot of complaints about how we couldn't measure it. So there's a permeable base that's now a new P item that's based off of some work we did with the IPRF. Sorry guys, the reactivity testing is exactly the same. That was off limits. It's still the modified ASTM C1260, which is run to 28 days, 0.1% expansion. And the 1567 still has to be run, and it's a combined materials test. The FAA was adamant we leave that one alone, so nothing changed in that. The aggregates, we refined the requirements for mixture optimization. The big thing is the engineer no longer is going to tell us what aggregates have to be used. That was being misinterpreted a little bit. The engineer is to specify the maximum size stone that they want, and then the contractor's free to use whatever the local material is that meets all the material requirements, and they can use that in any gradation that they want. 57 7s, it doesn't have to be 4s and 67s anymore. It's as long as you meet the maximum size that the engineer requests. The minus 200 material is allowed to increase. That's it's not like highways. It's like, what is it, like 0.5% contractors or 0.2%, something like that on the minus 200 material. That's referencing clays. It always gave us a problem because we had a lot of good limestone rocks that will go up to 1 to 2% whenever you start to move that stuff. So we've got that changed to where it goes up to 1.5%. We're still silent on where that's to be taken, and that was on purpose. It gives us a little wiggle room, so if we're still having problems and we're not getting up too high, we still may be able to push that through with approval. So these are all good things that's going to help us in construction. The allowable CAO content in fly ash has changed 13 to 15% in the past. That was to kind of try to eliminate some of the ashes. We're working on trying to get some more changes to that as well. The engineer decides if a bond breaker is needed and is to specify. There's a new spec for the bond breaker. The concrete mixture laboratory, the section's been moved. There's nothing changed in it necessarily. Here's a good one for us. The mixed proportions, the slump requirements have changed. There's no longer a specified slump from 1 to 1.5 inches for slip form paving. Contractor sets that with his machine and mix. Contractor decides what it's going to be up to 2 inches. The slump allowed for fixed forms has changed to 3 inches, and for hand placements it's going up to 4 inches. It's almost impossible to get a 1-inch slump out of a ready mix truck to put in a fillet form and try to hand finish that thing. For the state folks, this is good news that for aircraft 60,000 pounds or less, you're allowed to use compressive strength. You can probably get that through for any project. You just have to do the mixed correlation to do it. The concrete mix submittal has got its own section, been moved. Its requirements are in it at what needs to be in that submittal to make it a little more clear. The age has been changed from 90 to 100 days. A lot of times a project shut down, especially up north, for 90 days, easy. Everything's still there, nothing's changed, but yet if it's more than 90 days, we were required to resubmit new mix design. So we changed that to give a little more leeway in that one as well. Control strips are now required. This is not just for P501, it's for all the P items. We had a little bit of complaint internally about that. They're 250 feet for both the pilot lane and fill-in lane, but we felt like that it was probably an advantage, as much advantage to the contractor as it is for the contractor to show the owner that we're able to produce, demonstrate that the materials and the mixture and everything will give what we want to give with the quality that we want. It also gives us a visual representation of what's expected during production. So we think, and it's paid for if it meets all the requirements. It'll be paid for just like anything else, but it gives us a chance to work out the bugs and get everything running smoothly. And then if there's a discussion later, we can go back to the test pour and say, look, this is what we agreed to in the beginning. So we see that as a positive. Several things on the equipment here. The authority to approve the paver is not an engineer's responsibility. There's no standard given. So I've been the engineer of record before, and I know nothing about I used to know nothing about a slip form paver. I'm learning more. And so for me to be able to have that approval and walk out and look at a guy's paver and try to approve it just because it may be dirty or whatever, I don't care. If he can place concrete and do it to the standard that I want, it doesn't matter. That's his business. He's got to be able to produce it. We've added ASTM to cover volumetric plants. We do have one plant manufacturer that's starting to get a little traction. Change the operating frequency of the vibrators. It used to be 8 to 12,000 vibrations per minute. That's nuts. Some of these optimized mixtures, we're running around 7,000, and if you go up over 8,000, you're going to get segregation. So that's changed to state sufficient to consolidate the pavement without segregation or voids. Some other things have changed, and I'll skip through some of these that are really redundant, but the track line edge design is now the engineer's responsibility. It was being placed on the contractor. Some may be trying to skimp or not having enough space for the track line. They didn't felt we were really getting paid for it, so now I think it's like a 3-foot requirement that's in the design guide for the engineer for the contractor's track line, and it becomes part of the section. So it's being bid by all the contractors. The engineer will determine if the bond breaker is necessary. The 30-minute time limit is a bit of an issue. It has been. We've had loads rejected that were 31 minutes getting there on a cool day in October, which is nuts. So there's been some guidance on that as to be reasonable from where the plant is and get the plant set so that's not hard numbers like they used to be. The concrete placement, there was a lot of confusing language. We've changed some of that. We've defined excessive for the dowel holes as long as it's not outside the grout ring. We're not going to get too concerned about it. The means and methods have been taken out of some of the finishing techniques. That we were trying to get a little bit overzealous on how we specified that. The 1/8 of an inch mortar-rich surface has been changed to a 1/4 inch. I don't know how you measure either one of them. Certainly not an 1/8 of an inch. Don't know what the hell you do if you got it. What do you do? I mean, how do you rake it off of there? So, let's see. Honeycomb, that was another one that we've had a number of projects where you pull the forms off on a fillet and there's a little bit of honeycomb on the side because, you know, we are hand placing that 1-inch slump concrete, if you recall. So we had a little bit of problem with that. So we gave some form of a definition. I don't know if it's right or not, but it's better than what we had because used to we argued about what was excessive and what wasn't excessive. Opening to construction traffic has been changed to 450 PSI from 550 is for aircraft on fast track projects. So 450 helps us get on it quicker to expedite construction. Some of the parameters in the repair, removal, and replacement has been changed. We did add high weight methaculate as a repair remedy for shrinkage cracks. And that used to be in the spec was 4 inches or more it came out. Well, guess what? This may be a shock to most of us in the room. 4 inches crack on a 6-inch pavement is a little bit different from 4 inches on a 20-inch pavement. And yes, we have a lot of 20-inch thick concrete in airfields. So we changed that to 1/3 of the depth. There's been some penalties added. The should not grind more than 10% has been removed. If you grind more than 25, 95% pay is the maximum. Same thing where we have a lot of spall repairs. Contractor quality control, as I said, has moved up to its own animal. The California profilograph has been removed from the spec. It's no longer a requirement. The smoothness spec is changed. You can use rolling in whatever that machine is. Yeah, who said that? Somebody got it. Somebody. If you're from the South, you can't say inclinometer. I promise you. It's a challenge. So the smoothness, unlike highways, now wake up highway people, this may interest you. We don't give a crap how smooth it is as long as we don't damage the airplane. It's not a ride spec. And a lot of the airport engineers, and there's one airfield in particular that tried to change that, because 15 inches per mile is what the acceptance criteria is, but one of the airports thought they wanted the smoothest pavements in the world to go with their busiest airport in the world, so that eliminates it to 2 right there, depending on when this statement was made. Well, they changed it to 4 inches per mile, which is kind of difficult to meet, especially when you're replacing the keel section and you're tying to 100 inches per mile on each side. So it doesn't work too well. So that got changed to make it a little easier. There's no deduction for smoothness if you meet the 15 inches per mile, and you must file a modification to standard to change it. So that should help us as far as getting penalized for smoothness. There is adjustments now for, again, areas with spalls and areas that's received 25% grinding. Edge slump is no longer an acceptance criteria. Doesn't mean you don't have to meet it. That's a quality control parameter. You got a straight edge test and a lot of other tests, and if you meet all those, edge slump's not a problem. So why the hell we got to have an edge slump acceptance criteria? These are the acceptance criteria: strength, thickness, grade, smoothness if it's on a runway, and it's to protect the airplane, not to protect the passengers. And there's some adjustments for repair and adjustments for grinding. And again, I won't comment on the smoothness other than the overall profile of a runway has to be made. That's a pavement management issue. The FAA is collecting data. They want that. They want the 15 inches per mile so they have something to compare to in the future. Whew. Damn, I'm tired. I went through that. I don't know. I'm still on zero. I still got 30 minutes for questions if y'all. I'm sure there's not one since the contractors are the only, and they ain't understood what, they don't read the spec anyway. So, it's yours.